are here. It's This Week in Science. We're dancing our way into another Wednesday evening of science discussion. We're going to bring all the science to you. And at this very moment, I am trying to once again deal with Facebook because what? Why? How? Who? Facebook? Why? What'd you do now? I don't know. But anyway, we try to come here every week and do this science show. And bye-bye, Facebook. You go bye-bye. 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 You're deleted. But I'm going to make a new one in a second. And this is the part where we do the pre-show so that we can tell you all the things that you already know if you watch this show every week, which is that we broadcast here every Wednesday from about 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific time-ish or 5 a.m. Dutch, Denmarkian time, whatever.
Central European time is what it's called.
Yeah.
5 a.m. Thursday.
Thursday. He's in the future for me. Blair is struggling against the sleep demons. The sand is ticking through the hourglass of her eyelids. But we are here to do this science show, talk about all the things that we love this week. And if you all do like this show, please click the likes and subscribes and the shares and everything and get it out there for the algorithms and make us all happy so that we can start the show and have people find us so we can have the people all together doing the show. You ready for the show?
Yes, let's do it.
Yes, my allergies are ready too. Whee! What did you do? Achoo, achoo, achoo. Hey, everybody. We're going to start this show in a 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 974, recorded on Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. Making science popular with vomiting sharks. You're going to love us for this. Hey, everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight we will fill your head with baby hands, elephant names, and spatial reframes. But first...
Disclaimer. From the ever-sunny shores of Ursa Minor Beta to the fanciful fjords of Magathera, not to mention the too much perspective vortex of Frogstar World B, space has long been a place that is less than hospitable to human visitors, even without being subjected to Vogon poetry. Astronauts in low Earth orbit, even on short-term space flights, suffer from all sorts of long-term health problems, infections, latent viruses that reactivate, increased skin sensitivity, bone loss, kidney issues, eyesight issues, and more. It is almost as if space does not want us to so much as dip our toes into the vastness of its galactic hot tub, but humans are persistent creatures, never satisfied with having a comfortable place to live. They seek adventure to explore the unknown, no matter how inconvenient, uncomfortable, or physically debilitating the journey may be. And when the going gets too tough, the persistent humans turn to This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science. What's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science.
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. It is always so good to get everyone back in the room together for some science conversation. I hope everyone had a wonderful week. It has been a doozy. My goodness gracious. We have so much science to talk about tonight. I brought a whole bunch of stories related to fun things like JWST doing what JWST does best, growing old because of space. Yep, Justin, you and I are on the same same little landing pad there, I guess. But I don't know. Yeah, we'll talk about that aging thing later. And I think I've got brains and baby hands, because that's kind of where I'm at usually. Yeah. What do you have, Justin?
I've got bad air in the bayou, Buck research on the space station. And then kind of an interesting story about supplements.
I hope everyone is supplementing their diet with a regular dose of This Week in Science. Blair, what is in the animal corner?
Oh my goodness. I have just a regular old menagerie this week. I have sharks, I have giraffes, and I have elephants.
It sounds like a perfect menagerie, except you're missing the head stabby and invertebrates, but we'll get those some other time.
Not this week.
Yeah. This week. All right, everyone.
Nice megafauna.
Got the megafauna, we got the mini fauna, we got the microfauna, but not all at the same time, maybe. Anyway. This is This Week in Science, and I do need to remind all of you that if you are watching on one of our streaming platforms, we do stream live weekly Wednesday nights around 8 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Facebook when Facebook cooperates, because it does its own things these days. We are on podcast channels as well, so you can find us on all these different podcasty places. And I have finally, I think, fixed the podcast upload issue with the YouTube podcasts thing. So fingers crossed, if you were doing Google Podcasts and now you're doing the YouTube podcasts, you can find the edited podcast version of the show, right? The part that gets rid of the before and the after. In the YouTubes. It's the YouTube podcasty things. Yeah, there's so many. It's just so, I don't know. It's just a whole thing these days. But if you just want to find us and want to know what's going on in the show, head over to TWIS.org. It's our website, show notes, all those great things, contact info. It's all there. Make sure that you share, subscribe, and like. Dun, dun, dun. Ready for the science?
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk science.
Yeah, I'd rather talk science than like weird, shocked groundhogs or hamsters. But all right. JWST, it's the biggest, baddest telescope in space that takes nice pictures that we like to look at and find out new things about the universe. It's been doing all sorts of cool things ever since it ended up in space, unfurled its nice little solar panels and sensor doohickeys. It's got cameras, infrared sensors, doing all sorts of spectrographic imaging of various elemental ionic components of atmospheres around stars and planets and galaxies. Oh my! Remember, the big thing about JWST is that unlike Hubble, which is a light-based telescope and can only see things that are emitting light, JWST can cut through all of the dust, all of the smog, whatever, is in the way. And so researchers have been using it to look further back in cosmological time. So this study that's out as of, it's kind of out all over the place in its press releases and archive.org version as of about like a week ago, maybe. NASA put or the paper was published May 31st on archive.org. NASA put out a comment about it. But this paper is awesome. It's kind of the paper that's like, hey, all those things about that period of time called the reionization period, that period after the Big Bang where everything was like plasma and it was like, we're going to expand and we're going all over the place. Inflation, it's quite a thing. Yeah. The reionization period lasted about the first billion years of the universe. Hubble couldn't see past that first billion years. So for a very long time, we were like, no, nothing before that first billion years. And we've been getting further and further back, especially with JWST. And this particular
one of the ways that we've also been handling this is the universe is just older. The universe is just older than we thought. We'll add 1 billion years here, another 500 million when we need it. It seems like it's older because we can still see back. The idea is we couldn't see back further than what you're saying. There's a billion-year period, right? So if we could see further back, that meant the universe was just older, and that happened earlier. That's how we've been aging our universe.
We have aging yet again. Well, now we can see clearly now that JWST is turned on, and this study is awesome. It's got a whole bunch of authors, and it is called The First Billion Years, according to JWST.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. They have taken a really, really good look at a couple of early galaxies. Things that they were like, not really sure what's going on with the redshift there. Can't tell whether it's like closer or further or what's happening. And now they're like, oh, well, yeah. So this one galaxy, it turns out that it's actually from 300 million years after the Big Bang. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that again.
Uh-oh.
What?
That's 700 million years before there was supposed to be an entire galaxy formed.
Right. So we're going back and back and back. So there was this reionization. So the plasma turning into hydrogen, helium, actual ions, and then clumping together and starting to turn into dust and gas and things that weren't just energy, hot plasma. And yeah, well, apparently JWST can see through time and has taken us back to a period when oxygen and even carbon dioxide and or carbon at least were beginning to form in the early universe. And this galaxy that an experiment called the JWST Advanced Deep Extragalactic Survey, JADED team, which is co-led by UC Santa Cruz astronomer Brant Robertson, they've put out a whole bunch of different studies, really. And this is just one of the many studies in addition to the paper in archive.org that is basically rewriting textbooks. And they say, with stunning clarity, JWST has revealed the universe's first billion years. The scientific community is analyzing a wealth of JWST imaging and spectroscopic data from that era and in the process of rewriting astronomy textbooks. So what they've done with this imaging is they've gone back, and because of the fact that JWST can see in through the dust and sees heat signatures, but also that energy is still, is it traveling toward us? Is it traveling away from us? Is it in that inflation expansion period? So they're looking at redshift in this galaxy, and that's how they were able to compare it to other galaxies and really be able to say, we think that this is from the first 300 million years of our universe. So 300 million years after the Big Bang, there were galaxies. And they said what they used to think is that a lot of these big galaxies, bright lights, were like, oh, they're just like around a black hole. And the black hole's doing this thing, and the light we're seeing is a quasar. These were stars. It's the brightest thing that they've seen. It's the most distant, brightest thing, and they think that it was just full of stars hundreds of times brighter than our own sun. Oxygen was present 300 million years during this reionization period. They think now also that during this reionization period that the light that was being seen, that these galaxies were forming like in little tiny pockets and clusters. So the images that we see of the night sky, it's like stars in the sky, not all stars, sometimes they're galaxies. And but that's not really what happened. There were these weird bubbles of condensation or of clumping of matter that fell into, and the rest was still plasma or still reionizing. And so that early differentiation of little galaxies or big galaxies, it kind of set the stage for all of the filaments that we see connecting the various parts of the universe today with our various eyes on the sky. It's pretty good. Hey, yeah. Anyway, I think it's pretty cool. They get to look at lots of things a long time ago. Not quasars. Yeah.
This isn't the last time this telescope's going to rewrite textbooks, I think. We're going to continue to get lots of really wild information.
I think that is, for me though, it's just like, okay, this goes against everything. Like how were these larger molecules? How were there the big stars? How were there this much light?
You
what was
say
happening?
goes against everything. You have to understand that.
Learned.
Yes.
I know
however,
nothing.
much of what you have learned, was based on
assumptions.
Mathematical models being run backwards in time without any data along the way to go. Yeah, that's right. That's a hit. That's a hit. Wait, now you're missing. So this is, we have figured out much of how this universe came to be by back engineering the limited data sets that we had with telescopes and understanding of physics. And now we have better
online
telescopes.
Paper without computers.
Yeah, with no AI, just human intelligence and captured knowledge and education and applied reasoning.
Yeah.
So all of these things, when we're getting into the rewriting of the textbooks, it's because a lot of textbook in this portion was sort of placeholder for when we get more information. We'll fill in the details, but we'll say there was like 1 billion years. It's kind of just in itself is this happened over 1 billion years. That's also not very specific, right? So
yeah, but there's a question though. Being able to look back in time and gauge what is time. Our candles are only as accurate as we can measure. Our estimate of c, the gravitational constant, E = mc squared, is just as good as we can estimate from
the speed of light.
The speed of light, or speed of light. Yeah, not gravitational constant. Sorry. Yes, speed of light. And there, And what if some of these telescopes, like where we use gravitational lensing to allow us to see past one galaxy in a time to another galaxy behind it, and further back in time, like a microscope or a telescope, using lenses, gravitational lenses. What if though it's a hall of mirrors? What if they shift the light and bend it? And what if it isn't always just the way we think it is? And so is it coming back at us? And we're like, oh, it's 300 million years before or after the Big Bang. But what if it's like, a neighbor? We just aren't looking at it right.
So either our estimation of the age of the universe is incorrect, or our understanding of how fast things happen is incorrect, or we're not measuring what we thought we're measuring.
All of the above. Yep. Thanks, JWST, for throwing everything into wonderful question.
And I'm actually impressed because this is one of those things that I've always had in that category of, but we'll never really know. There's no way to see. There's no way to capture data from the distant past like this. And of course, there is. That's what cosmology is doing. That's what JWST is doing right now. It's looking into a distant past and collecting data from it. And that is amazing that we have even this ability to capture this data.
So
even if it is from the backside of a universe spun around a black hole, twisted around a gravitational lensing of a galaxy and sent back to us, still very fascinating.
So it is fascinating. And, but we have to trust
it doesn't change,
researchers.
And regardless of where it is, it doesn't actually change the age of it. Because even if that galaxy was snapshotting behind us, was 8 billion years in the distance behind us, and it went and got zipped around and then came back to us, it's still, all of that distance tells the story of its time.
Yeah. Whatever its time is.
It means it would have to have been there for all of the time it took. Right? So
I need its birth certificate.
Even if it's not where we think it is in the regionally physical-ish relationship-y thing, the time element of that light traveling is unalterable, regardless of the path it took to get back to JWST, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, the light,
So
at least. So you think.
Until we rewrite the textbooks on that.
Okay, we're going to go too long. Blair has to go to bed. But anyway.
That's our first story.
I know, it's amazing.
How is she going to bed already?
Awesome stuff, because the clock still ticks here on Earth for people who have babies and have to get up in the morning. So, Justin, all of this stuff with space and time and most of us have to just trust the word of the scientists on the data and what they're doing. And it's like, okay, cosmos wonder, yay. That doesn't really change much for most of us on the planet on a daily basis, but nutritional supplements do.
So this is an interesting one. This is University of Guelph, I think it is in Canada, has come to the damning conclusion about one of its own botanists, Stephen Newmaster, which a panel of investigators has found with high probability that the scientist engaged in data fabrication and falsification, failed to acknowledge sources of data, mismanaged conflicts of interest in at least 3 papers. There were also. So
that's why you said his first and last name. You really want to put him on blast.
Well, you know why? Because the University of Guelph is such a oddly sounding and looking word that I'm like, I'm 100% sure that I read a paper from them based on a nutritional supplement that I wanted to take. And I was like, it had something to do with memory. And I took it, and I can't remember what it was called. So obviously it didn't work. I might be a little bit like, hey, I think I've relied on reading one of these papers. They said, there was numerous false or unsupportable statements that showed a disrespect for science communication. 2013, Newsmaster and colleagues had used DNA barcoding, a method to identify species of tiny segments of genetic material, to verify ingredients in echinacea, ginkgo biloba, and other supplements.
Ginkgo biloba.
Biloba.
It's the sticky tree. There's a bunch of them.
Whole bunch of things. So these are substances that they're supposed to have the health benefits that they're looking into. They published this paper that found that many supplements lacked ingredients listed on their labels, and that toxic contaminants tainted some others. So this was don't trust your supplements. They're lying to you. Things were pulled from shelves. There was a whole shakeup of the supplement industry, which was probably not completely undeserved, because this is not the only look that's been done on what's in supplements. However, this was such a big deal that a lot of the supplement companies began spending a lot of money quality testing the supplements. So that, then you're like, okay, well, even if this paper was terrible and the scientists did awful things, hey, how come they weren't testing them before? So now a lot of these major supplement companies are sending their ingredients for testing to make sure they have what they say they have. Thing is,
that sounds like something that should be federally regulated, don't you think?
They're not, because they're supplements still.
Yeah.
Thing is, where they sent those things to get tested?
University of Guelph.
No, they sent them to a private company that was created by one Stephen Newmaster, botanist at Guelph University in Canada, who apparently had set up several supplement testing facilities privately in a private corporation.
There he is.
Before publishing on the potentially fabricated, or I guess it's now been substantiatedly fabricated data. that there were problems. in that.
Everyone boo this man.
Boo!
No, it's like, I don't know, Google tamped it down like in the old days where people would make like their web rings or whatever. It's like, I'm going to link to you and you're going to link to me. We're going to make, and then like people were like, I'm going to spend a week and I'm going to build 3,000 websites and they're all going to link to each other and I'm going to rank in Google and I will make money.
Yeah, there was 8 experts in DNA barcoding and related fields that accused Newmaster of scientific misconduct, identifying data essential to his landmark papers that were missing, fraudulent, or plagiarized.
Ooh, plagiarized, additionally?
Another investigation found evidence of a broader pattern of fabrication and data manipulation in speeches, teaching, biographical statements over 2 decades. Also suggested that Newmaster embellished or simply invented findings or accomplishments and claimed credit for work done by other scientists. One of the testing companies that he created, because there was multiple apparently, True ID, is now defunct, although many supplement makers are still carrying the mark of certification from this no longer existing.
Of course.
Nature's Way. That one's like super, that one's all over the place. You see them on
I probably got some of my supplements
around here.
And read the papers and looked at the things.
Oh gosh, I have to
We
go
try to
look
do
at all
our
my
own
supplements
homework.
now.
If you can't trust the scientists, then there's nobody left. So, anyway.
This is why scientists are doing a lot of work to make open science a thing, to make open science communication a thing, to create large databases, to pre-publish their research methods so that they can get approved before the studies happen. So it's kind of like the scientific community. There's this question now, like, oh, universities and science can't police itself. But, everywhere you go, there are going to be people gaming the game, right? There are going to be people who are taking advantage of the system, right? Oh, there's a system. I'm smarter than that. I can do it. Yeah. And that's what it sounds like. This person got caught, and it's going to impact people.
He found an opportunity, and the thing is too. It's like, oh gosh, so you can have a scientist who is out there wanting to find a nutritional supplement that does solve a problem for humanity. And then you have somebody who's putting out a supplement who's saying it solves a problem just to make money. And then if the scientist doesn't ever find a thing that does a thing, finds is like, well, how else can I make a living based off of all of this? Well, I could be testing the things that other people are saying to see if it's right. But then in this case, that also didn't work. Apparently, couldn't figure out how to do that right. I'll just make it up. I'll just say it. Like, you end up in no better, no worse off than the other grifters. So, you're right. There needs to be a way that people can do oversight. And what were you saying, Blair, at the beginning of this? Something about there's no federal. Maybe there should be like a federal oversight of some sort.
Yeah, it's just so strange to me that it's not food, and it's not drugs.
But you still take it and
so
put
it's
it
nothing.
in the body.
It's money. It's money in a capsule form.
Yeah, what do you ingest that isn't food and isn't drugs? Like crayons?
Supplements.
This is it, right?
Supplements.
This is how are they in this? How have they lasted in this no man's land as long as they have? How is there
Money.
not some?
Lobby.
Well, yeah, of course.
So,
capitalism, got it.
So one of the things, though, like you hit on it earlier, Justin, is the idea that there are some researchers really doing real work to figure out how these compounds that are found in foods that we eat or that are parts of plants and other stuff that we've been using historically, going back a long time. So turmeric, right? Or turmeric is well known to have anti-inflammatory effects. And the amount, though, is, a lot of these things is like, well, you really got to take a lot to actually have an impact. And so the question is, with supplements, how much is enough? Which ones actually work? which ones don't. I mean, everybody's like Paul Stamets, mushrooms forever, which may be true, but
Wait,
we
what? I don't know the reference.
lion's mane and like all those other things. Anyway.
Oh, I take that all the time. You know,
But if you
actually,
are
maybe that's
taking
the one. Maybe
if
that's
you
the
were-
one I looked up.
if you're taking something as a drug to supplement your physiology that might actually have negative interactions with other things and drugs, you know, it's like, oh, you shouldn't eat grapefruit because you did that, you know, whatever. It's yeah, the
Well, I
regulation,
think
Blair,
about, like,
needs to happen.
people who don't take any supplements normally get told to take supplements when they're pregnant and when they're breastfeeding. It's part of the deal. And doctors who will otherwise say you don't need supplements, you can get what you need from what you eat. This is the exception, right? This is not only did I need that, but I needed iron when I was pregnant.
Well, it's because your child is going to steal it from your body.
Right. Oh, no, I get that. I
You
had to take
don't-
calcium and I had to take all sorts of things, but like,
Do you want
People
osteoporosis
don't
or do you want a healthy child?
that stuff that you're taking is what it says it is, and whether it has any contaminants in it, which, like, I don't know, kind of a delicate time to suddenly be taking something full of contaminants.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, that
totally.
supplement that you took has never been tested and has arsenic and heavy metals. So,
Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yep. Yay.
Yeah,
Hey.
it's not a great relief to know that the labs that have been looking into this are from a researcher who was fabricating his initial look to say that there was a problem. Like I get the little capitalistic vicious cycle that they created, but yeah,
I
it
just
means
wanna
that we
say-
still don't know anything.
Any doctor on the internet who has advertisements and says, buy my supplements, don't. And don't
red flag.
honestly,
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
reason we haven't ever sold Dr. Justin's Not a Real Doctor poop pills.
Wait. So I'm not saying we've never sold it, but it wasn't as big of an industry as I thought it would be.
Not on my website, at least. Anyway.
No, you'll have to DM me. I'll DM them back.
Better than Blair, let's move on. I think I'm gonna vomit.
Yeah, that makes me want to barf. So pretty simple story. You know, shark vomits echidna. Tale as
What?
old as time.
What? Why?
I mean, this is like a very silly anecdotal thing, but this is a group of Australian scientists. They were doing an ocean research trip and they were measuring tiger sharks, and one barfed up a whole echidna.
Okay, so I just want to go, okay. Let me put it on screen right now.
Yes.
There's a shark which lives in the water
Mhm.
and
Yes.
is like looks like a shark. I mean,
Mhm.
big mouth and lots of teeth and everything, but you know,
Yes, tiger shark, one of the more dangerous sharks for sure. Yeah.
and tiger
And
sharks
can bite
do-
open a turtle. Yeah.
They do tend to come closer to shore sometimes when they're feeding.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Okay, so we've got tiger shark. And then the idea of echidna. Echidna is like
Mhm.
a weird marsupial Australian porcupine.
So they are a monotreme. So they're an
Monotreme.
egg-laying mammal.
Thank
Mhm.
you. Mhm.
And yes, and they look like a porcupine with a long pointy nose.
But those are spines.
They're not related to porcupines, right? But they're covered in spines. So a couple of things here. Yeah, they're not aquatic animals. So this is something that's kind of not been observed by researchers, at least in the past. So they were from James Cook University. They were tagging sharks, and this 3-meter, or AKA let's say 9-foot tiger shark, just they were tagging it, and it just barfed an entire echidna up, just a whole one. So it was whole enough still that it was definitely a recent snack. The lead researcher, Nicholas Lubitz, says, when it spat it out, I looked at it and remarked, what the hell is that? Yeah, so they figured it out. It was an echidna. Very strange. There's really only a couple of explanations for this. They're only found in Australia and New Guinea. Tiger sharks eat pretty much anything, and so their best guess is that either the echidna was swimming in the shallows and a tiger shark ate it, or it was traveling between islands, which sometimes they do. So they swim a little bit. I think option 3 is fell in. Just throwing that out there. From what I've seen of
Or
echidnas,
maybe
they're
it
not the
was,
most
maybe it was
graceful.
foraging near the water. I don't know.
Absolutely, could have been.
What do you mean near the water?
Anyway,
Wait a second. How did the sharks don't jump out of the water and grab something and go back in, do they?
no,
I saw
this
Sharknado.
buddy would have had to
They
get
do.
into the water in some way. So either intentionally or unintentionally, an echidna took a dip and became snack. The researchers say, I think it just must have felt funny in his throat because the tiger shark was unharmed by the spines and they followed it with a tracker for a while afterwards, totally fine. So just very strange food web dynamic happening here that I never really would have thought about. Also, the tiger shark was very lucky it wasn't a porcupine because porcupine quills are barbed.
Oh.
Yeah.
There was another story that was out there this week about one of a shark that washed up on a beach in Australia that had just eaten a dolphin. You could see it had an undigested dolphin in it.
Wow.
And they think but it was missing its liver that looked like an orca attack. So right after making a kill on the dolphin, the shark got eaten.
Man, that's
by an
like
orca.
in
This is
Star
food
Wars: The
web.
Phantom Menace when they say there's always a bigger fish.
It's always an orca. It's at the
on
top
the
of that list. Always
Somebody
an orca.
knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, yeah. So tiger shark ate an echidna. That's
And
all.
now,
That's the story.
I know that echidnas swim, which I didn't know before. I wouldn't have thought about that.
Or we know that sharks can come on land and chase
not
not
those sharks, not tigers.
What it does remind us is that sharks can be generalists, and that when the food is there, they will eat it or try to. And
especially tiger sharks, they'll eat anything.
I will not. I like lots of things, but I will not eat everything.
Echidna probably doesn't taste very good.
Yeah, and I don't really like astronaut ice cream either. It's just not as yummy as you really think it's going to be. I don't know how astronauts do it, but a whole bunch of studies came out this week related to astronauts and how space makes them old. Yeah. One of the studies wasn't actually on astronauts, but it used the murine model, which means mice that went to space, to look at markers related to frailty. Frailty is a syndrome that occurs in certain individuals as they age. It's usually a marker of rapid aging and getting closer to the senescent period of your life. So the researchers in this particular study looking at aging and putative frailty biomarkers being altered by spaceflight, they looked at this data from mice from NASA's Gene Lab, astronaut data from JAXA, and the inspirations for missions. And they were able to identify changes in gene expression and the patterns of that expression and how it might be indicative of conditions that are kind of like frailty in space because you're not being pulled down by gravity and constantly having to fight against it. And that the activity and the gravity, the mass, everything that we do here on our planet, it It keeps us alive because we're fighting constantly against it. And when you go to space, you're not fighting anymore. You're floating, free to be you and me. These researchers have determined, however, that these hazards of human space flight are multiple, and in their work, they have identified these as being, as I open it up to bring it to the stage, we've got space radiation, altered microgravity, isolation and confinement. Yeah, that's one. Distance from Earth, and hostile closed environments as opposed to isolated. Anyway, these lead to cardiovascular deconditioning, which is not good for your life. Renal stone formation, so that gives you kidney issues. Muscle atrophy, that's the frailty thing. Space flight associated neuroocular syndrome, which we have talked about before because it's kind of like, businessmen, they put their ties on too tight and it can lead to glaucoma earlier in life. It's kind of a different but weird, interesting, similar thing where the optical disc gains edema because gravity is not pulling the fluids through your body in the same way that it had before. And so nerves get affected and the whole eyes become affected. Sensory motor, vestibular function, weakened skeletal function. So osteopenia, which is a precursor to
Porosis?
Porosis. Osteopenia is kind of
earlier.
Osteopenia is actually a make-it-up term. It's a research term that means before you have osteoporosis.
But if
So
you
it
can
doesn't-
catch osteopenia, then maybe you can stop osteoporosis. So it's
Yeah,
good.
and then Merck came out with a diagnosis of osteopenia and started giving people drugs for it, even though they don't have a condition yet that requires it. It's a whole thing, but yeah. It's a separate thing.
Yeah. Anyway, sarcopenia, it's a lot of things that come from that are involved in aging. And so really going to space, it's very similar pathophysiology, which is really like the mechanisms that your body goes through toward disease, pathos. So going to space, so far, not seen as really great. In the other study, they did direct RNA resequencing of astronaut blood, and they found a whole bunch of markers, some of them that they're looking at RNA, and they found what they call M to the 6th A methylation profiles, and these levels changed post-flight, indicating a stress and a change in the transcriptional responses within the blood and the ability to move oxygen around and all the aspects of making good, happy body healthy. But they were able to see a lot of pathways with what they call the most differentially methylated genes, and within these, it's fusion sustained in monocytes. So monocytes are cells involved in the immune response. Nitric oxide, that is also involved in metabolic responses. Skin tumors, pathways related to oxygen take-up and release of carbon dioxide by erythrocytes, which that doesn't sound great. You kind of want those to work. But they found a whole bunch of methylated sites. Methylation is basically epigenetic stuff that happens because life and RNA. Yay, RNA. It is the, hey, your body's working, awesome signal, except it's also now being used as a marker for, oh no, you don't want that to happen because, anyway. But it's great. Don't go to space. That's all I'm going to say. You had another story, but not astronaut oldness. What did you want to
It actually is. This is I think there must have been a conference
series
somewhere.
No, it's a series of papers that all came out in Nature Open Access this last week.
Yeah, this is another one. This one's from Buck's Institute for Research on Aging. Yep. But what they looked into is, more specifically, they were focused on the immune system, and they were mapping out how microgravity affects immune cells at a single cell level. So astronauts in low Earth orbit all the things you were just saying. One of the ones I think wasn't in that list, though, was the latent virus reactivation.
Wait, what?
Thing. Yeah. You have a virus that is being contained that becomes reactivated. So there's a drop in normal immune function that takes place. That could also be related to a lot of the other things that we see.
Mhm.
The researchers in this case used cells in simulated microgravity along with some astronaut data. So to simulate the environment of almost no gravity, the team grew cells inside of a rotating wall vessel, which is a device that was developed by NASA to simulate microgravity environments. So they run cells through this rotational device that's simulating the microgravity, look at the cells, collect data, and yes, they have changed. The shape of the cells seems to be a little bit different. And how do we know that this is the same type of changes taking place in space? The team then took their data and validated the findings by comparing it to the data with the other space studies like we've been talking about already. JAXA, cell-free epigenome study, mission SpaceX's Inspiration 4 mission, NASA's twin study was in here, and spleens from mice housed on the International Space Station.
Oh,
The study found changes in gravitational force altered the way the cells function all the way down to the cellular level, not just something else that they interact with, but within the cells. The study found parallels between immune cell changes in space and those occurring with aging on Earth, which is what the Buck Institute Research Center normally is studying. Focusing on several genes and biochemical pathways that are affected by the microgravity, the Buck team turned to a machine learning program that was able to detect more than 2 million interactions between genes and different drugs and foods, and they identified dozens of potential compounds that could have beneficial effects on this. They chose just one to test. The plant pigment quercetin.
Oh,
This is
that's
something
it's in walnuts.
and red onions and grapes and berries and apples and citrus fruits. And the reason they picked this one to explore further is not necessarily that the algorithm that they used ranked it any higher than the other compounds that they were finding that could have an interaction in this, but it's because it was already a widely available antioxidant, anti-aging supplement. So in testing
Again,
quercetin,
supplement. People have been taking it for a while. Yeah. Or you eat walnuts.
They according to them, it was able to reverse approximately 70% of the changes caused by a lack of gravity and protected cells from reactive oxygen excesses. So we now have a supplement for astronauts. Ta-da!
Who ran this study? Was it my guy Steve?
Well, this is what we got to backtrack now, because now we're like, okay, well, wait a second. We just had a thing. But the Buck Institute for Research on Aging is normally, they can't find nothing and still get funding, right? Like they gotta be. So is it a conflict? Do they have connections to supplement companies? This is like all the sort of questions that, of course, you would want to ask secondarily. But I think that when you are doing research in this environment, using NASA data, sending it out, you're not doing it in a corner of the research world where you can say, this is a Canadian study from Guelph University, say, just to pick one, that can just be used by a nutritional company to point to. You would be throwing yourself out there into the realm of NASA trying to protect its astronauts. So I have a feeling they've been vetted.
Yeah.
But I haven't dug any further. I could be totally wrong.
I mean, everything we need to look at. I like the fact, though, that this is a series of, or an issue with several studies released all together, because what it does is it shows that, okay, even though this one paper showed this one thing, this other paper shows this thing which overlaps. And so it allows for the, I guess, the synthesis of all of that data, or all of the information to kind of go, okay, this seems to be going in this direction, that goes in that direction. Where is the next step for the research? So
yeah, and especially because one of their findings showed that lymphocytes, monocytes, these are key immune cells, but these are also like cells within the system of the blood system, blood creation, that are then transferring this oxygen that we find is missing from other parts of the body and organs and is causing issues. So it does seem like there can be a what is missing the word right now, but a mechanical aspect, to these the conditions in space on cellular levels that is causing perhaps different gene expressions, that is causing different functions or interactions, that is limiting or altering the normal bodily function. And so it could be that all of these things that are connected are that see all these studies that you're saying that overlap. There may be solutions for a problem in one study that was identified within another study that identified things that are that they see being different. So with all of them together, that combined picture of multiple research angles and multiple research directions and disciplines can potentially create the solutions that would allow human beings to be in orbit longer, healthier.
hopefully, I mean, if that's where we want to go, we want to do it as healthily as we can, or know that if you're going that way, you're not coming back, or your offspring are not coming back, or whatever, one way to the moon, Alice.
And if we can do it up there, we can do it down here too.
We can do it anywhere. Yes. This is This Week in Science. We're making it happen, talking about the science that other people made happen. We are bringing you, like we do every Wednesday, all the things that we thought were cool to talk about. And we're asking questions about it, digging into it, adding our little hints of questions and ponderings about where it's all going and how it's going to work. We do hope that you love the show and enjoy the way that we present these questions and this research. So if you do, please hit the like, subscribe, and the share buttons all at once. Tell your friends, subscribe to TWIS right now. Let them know. Text your friend. This is a really great thing. You should be watching it right now. You should subscribe, eh? Go to Reddit, to the podcasts subreddit, and answer some questions there, and just toss This Week in Science in there for whatever the answer is. What's your favorite podcast this week in science? What podcast made you feel things this week in science? Is there a podcast that changed your life this week in science? Please go do that on the subreddit. I think that would be really awesome, because I'm seeing too many of what we're not on there, and it would be nice to get our name in there. And additionally, head over to Patreon, or not Patreon, twist.org, and you can click on the Zazzle link so you can get all sorts of merchandise, like this awesome sweatshirt with some art on it that Blair drew. There's a calendar if you still need to know what's going on for the next 6 months that Blair made. It's up there as well, and there's all sorts of other cool stuff. Help support us by buying our merchandise, or click on the Patreon button and support us in an ongoing fashion, month by month. Choose your level of support, and we'll thank you by air. No, I will breathe air as I thank you by name at the end of the show. And there's some nice little gifts for you as well for the $10 and more per month sponsors. But any amount really helps. Whatever you can do, just thank you. Your support means everything. We can't do it without you. Thank you. We are going to come on back right now for that section of the show that we haven't had regularly for a while, but we do know and love so much on This Week in Science. It is time for Blair's Animal Corner with Blair.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl, except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
What you got, Blair, other than yawns?
Couldn't help it. I have a story about giraffes, and I'm very excited to bring this story because when I was in college getting my zoology degree, I had already worked at the zoo for a while, and I showed up in my vertebrate biology class thinking I knew what was up. And
You
it
always
one
know
of
what's up.
the
Yeah, yeah. We're young.
well,
We know
you know,
everything.
yeah, of course. And my professor at one point said, like, who knows why a giraffe has a long neck? I was like, that's easy. So they can reach the leaves up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, wrong.
What? No.
It's a sexually selected trait because the males use their necks to fight. And how do we know that? It's because if you look at which leaves giraffes eat, they don't eat the leaves that they could reach at the highest heights. They eat from like here.
Wait.
So
They're not stretching to reach the shelf that's over the refrigerator or the one with the
exactly.
yeah, okay.
So if yes, imagine if you were 7 feet tall and everyone's like, oh, that's easy. They're 7 feet tall so they can reach the top of the fridge, but you're always eating out of the cheese drawer. That can't be why, right? So
No, it's because you love the cheese.
So this blew my mind. And then I spent the last, I don't know, 20 years telling people that giraffes were tall because they fight with their necks and it's called like neck sparring and they bang their necks together and it's this very intense competition for mates.
But if they're
Yes.
eating the ones that are neck high already, doesn't that mean that that's how tall they needed to be to eat those?
So here's the thing.
Like they already did the stretching.
If they needed only to get to these things that are here, why did evolutionary pressure push them past the area that they were trying to reach? It doesn't make sense. The giraffes that expended less energy, making a less tall neck, would benefit from having leftover energy.
And they don't exist.
Right. So that's the problem, is that there has to be some additional selective pressure that's making them go taller, right? Now, here is the study that I brought this week from Pennsylvania State University.
Okay.
They looked at hundreds, thousands, many photos of giraffes in captivity and the wild. The ones in captivity, they knew exactly how old they were. The ones in the wild, they only looked at adults since they couldn't guess exactly how old they are. And they looked at how long their necks are, how long their legs are, and the ratio of leg height to body and neck height to body. And this is important because, much like with human healthcare studies, we've been spending all this time looking at the male giraffes and haven't really asked ourselves about the female giraffes.
Oh, no. Okay.
So what they found was, yes, male giraffes are taller and therefore they have longer necks than females, which supports the necks for sex hypothesis, which is that their long neck helps them compete and therefore get their prize, right? But when they looked at this, they noticed that on the whole, males are taller. They are 30 to 40% bigger than females. Duh, right? But where this gets interesting is...
So wait.
Yes.
I think I got it.
Yes.
That means that the females' necks are just the right height to reach those higher leaves.
That is a great guess, but you see, Justin, every giraffe, regardless of how tall they are, according to this one study from when I was in college, is the big asterisk here.
Yeah.
They eat at this level. So
even
if
the
I'm
shorter
7 feet
females.
tall, I'm reaching to the 5 foot mark. If I'm 6 feet tall, I'm reaching to the 4 foot mark.
Well,
Blair.
Awesome.
Yes.
You worked at a zoo, 2 zoos, multiple zoos.
Yes. Yes.
Did you see giraffes stretch and reach to the top of trees to eat things? Like, what did you see? Did you watch the giraffes?
They would, but they would give up so easily.
Okay.
They just like play with the tall stuff with their tongues a little bit and be like, nah, it's not worth it.
Too much
No,
effort.
it's too much. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. This is, you could see there was all of the trees in the exhibits have a very clear line at which they've given up. And a lot of them are like at or like below their heads. Like they could definitely reach higher. So anyway,
All right,
But
cheese
still
drawer
above
height.
the heads
Okay.
of other creatures, right?
Yeah.
so the point of this study, let me get back to
Yeah,
this actual
let's do
study
it.
from This Week in Science. So the males are 30 to 40% bigger than females. When you adjust the height of their neck or the length of their legs for overall body size, males don't have bigger necks than females. They don't. In fact, it's the other way. Females have bigger necks than males when you adjust for body size.
What? Males are taller. They have
So-
longer legs, and the females have the longer necks.
So if you measured a male neck to a female neck, the male neck would still be larger. But if you measured the neck in relation to body size, the percentage of the height that is neck is more on a female. So that means these females are putting this energy, and there is this selective pressure for a relatively longer neck than males. What do females have to do that males don't have to do?
Have babies?
Create whole babies and then feed them with milk, because giraffes are mammals. So the new theory now is back to the old theory that this is all about gaining resources. So here's the thing. We've said the giraffes are to get food. Then we're like, nah, it's for sex. Then we're like, nah, it's for food. How about it's for both? Like, how I foresee this happening is that there was selective pressure to get higher leaves.
Yeah.
And that resulted in bigger, longer necks due to selective pressure. Then once you had those necks, males started neck sparring. And therefore, the bigger, chunkier necks did better.
Yep.
Similarly,
I think that
the
sounds
female necks, right? Yeah, like they got more and more nutrients the taller their necks were. Therefore, they fared better. There still kind of has to be an inciting incident to create this kind of runaway evolutionary tree that turned a cow into this, basically.
Right. So,
It's
and
a
then one of
very
the other
extreme
things that's sort of left out of this is the selective pressure, which could be just there's more leaves available higher, and therefore there was more resource. Or it could also be that there were other grazers, other tree grazers, that could reach up to a certain level that were competition. And if you're not a fighting creature that's going to fight off other animals and scare them away, then just being able to reach a little higher than them gives you a whole, your nutritional biome is preserved there out of the reach of, say, I don't know, elephants or whatever else is reaching up and grabbing things. Now you have this whole other area. So it could also be a selective pressure from other tree grazers.
Yes. The other thing that I think is so important to mention here, because this is all based on like perspective taking, right? So this is a quote from one of the lead researchers whose name is
Mr. Giraffe Man.
Doug Kavanagh. So Doug Kavanagh says, rather than stretching out to eat leaves on the tallest branches, you often see giraffes, especially females, reaching deep into the trees. That's what we were talking about, the cheese drawer, right? Giraffes are picky eaters. They eat the leaves of only a few tree species, and longer necks allow them to reach deeper into the trees to get leaves no one else can. Once females reach 4 or 5 years of age, they're almost always pregnant and lactating. So we think the increased nutritional demand of females drove the evolution of giraffes' long necks. And nobody has ever said that to me before, that this could be about getting deeper in the trees as opposed to higher up in the trees. And that makes so much sense.
Yeah,
You can get your hand deeper into the cheese drawer to find the really good aged cheese.
And it's going to be higher.
Justin, like the competition that you're talking about, like you could have giant horns that prevent you from going deeper into the tree, right?
Right. And it is also going to be taller, because the one thing that people seem to never get past is the giraffe's long neck. They also have very long legs.
Yeah.
Like their height is being resource is from two different aspects of their anatomy. It sort of reminds me of the T-Rex. Why is the T-Rex's arms so short? Well, it's not because they are short. It's because their legs got really big over evolution. Their arms just didn't.
And their head got huge.
And their head got huge.
Counterbalance. Yeah.
Right. But they actually, their arms, they didn't shrink. They just never grew because they weren't prioritized. This is prioritized legs and neck. So if you're trying to take height out of the equation, you have two things that you must overcome, and all your work will be ahead of you.
Right. I think the thing about the neck, though, is that you can have long legs, and it's disgusting to imagine a giraffe with long legs and not a long neck for some reason, but you could have long legs and not have a long neck. The neck actually is a huge issue for the giraffe because they have to pump blood up to the brain, and their heart has to work so hard to do that. So it would benefit them if they could gain height any other way, which is why you have to think of a function specifically for this neck, right? But so I just appreciate that this is kind of like, we're going back to the original hypothesis in some ways with this story, but they kind of throw some new elements into the equation that I really appreciate. Looking at the females and selection on females instead of males, because we're always talking about that. Thinking about the different ways the neck could be used besides just, it goes tall. It's really interesting.
It's also the reason they don't use their forelegs to combat each other is because that would be too hard to balance if you're a giraffe.
So they do use their forelegs to defend themselves, though. A giraffe can kill a lion with a good kick.
Ooh, yeah. A good kick.
So,
yeah.
Yes. So anyway, so we're staying in the African savanna. I'm going to move on to elephants.
Oh, I like it.
Elephants. We know elephants are smart. Colorado State University wanted to look at yet another way that elephants are smart. They were looking at wild African elephants, and they wanted to see if they have name-like calls. And we've talked on this show a lot about how some animal species have kind of names for each other.
I think
but
orca,
this is
maybe
a
dolphins and whales even.
This is a really particular case, though, because dolphins and parrots can call each other by names, but usually that is by imitating the signature call of that person. So it's almost like a Pokemon thing, right? Like Charizard, Squirtle, right? They're like calling their own name. So it's the other way around. It's like, you're always saying this one catchphrase, so people call you that as your name. That is now your name.
One of my favorite things is with different birds, like song sparrows. You can use like the bird apps, like Merlin, and you can play like a song sparrow song, and it sings the song. And then the male song sparrows in the spring will be like, I'm going to be in your yard, and I'm going to sing that song back to you. And they'll get like super close because they're like, I hear another song sparrow. And never mind that you're not a song sparrow and the sound is coming from you, but I hear that song and it is a threat. So I must sing.
Yeah. So like in that case, identifying another individual is all about their personal voice. But these elephants,
the name. Yeah.
Right. These elephants, researchers believe, have actual names, much more like we have names. So they use machine learning to confirm that elephant calls contained a name-like component that identified the intended recipient. And so they came up with this hypothesis based on observing elephants in the wild. And so when the researchers played back recorded calls, individual elephants would respond affirmatively to calls that were addressed to them by calling back or approaching the speaker. And calls for other elephants received less of an interaction. So if I'm out there calling, Dave, Justin, you're not going to say anything.
No, I don't know.
He probably.
Hey, what?
Yeah, he might.
There you go. Exactly. So you might, but you definitely pay more attention to your own name or something that sounds like your name.
Here's my question. Here's my question, and I don't know if it got this specific or not. Is the elephant's name the name used for it by one individual elephant or all of the other elephants?
So
Great question.
multiple
Like, does Kiki
other
call me
elephants.
Jackson, but you call me Justin, and so I respond to both?
No.
Okay.
This is multiple elephants using the same sound
Using
for
the
an
same name.
Yeah.
So they have an agreed identification in a audio verbal context for who that represents.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is where this is really unusual. So they're not mimicking the individual. They are creating arbitrary sonic labels for others.
Mhm.
And so so they were able to like play these songs back and
So-
see how they would respond. They were confused for a second, and then they were like, oh wait, I think someone's calling me. They like approached the speaker. Yes.
So the question is arbitrary? Who made it up? Who determined that
Is
was the
your
name
name
that the group?
arbitrary?
Yes, absolutely. But some, like my parents, decided that was the name. Some people, though,
Yeah.
decide that they are going to, change their name. Then they go to the government and they fill out a form and they've got a new name. And people can name themselves. So that's I think that's an interesting question that comes. Is it arbitrarily determined by the group of elephants, or is it individually determined? And
I
then
have a feeling
Great
Mama.
question.
I have a feeling Mama comes up with the name.
Could be.
It's Mama's
They
call.
are. It's
Mama's
kind of
calls out for
with
the
elephants.
individual baby, and the baby knows. Oh, that's when I need to go back to Mama, and that becomes the.
Yes, I
That's
mean,
my
bear in
guess.
mind,
That's just a
elephants
guess.
are
Yeah.
extremely communal in how they care for babies as well. So while you'll always have a mama as a baby elephant, there are lots of other, usually female elephants that also are caring for you in the day-to-day. So that's a really good question. Who knows? The next steps of this study, which was huge, it was a 14-month-long study of intense field work in Kenya. They followed elephants around. They recorded their vocalizations. They recorded about 470 distinct calls from 101 unique callers that corresponded with 117 unique receivers. So they had 117 names basically that they found through this study. So
that's
they
big.
want
Like, that's a good data set. That's not like 15 people in an fMRI, right? That's
right.
That's big.
Yeah. So what they want to do next is to develop more understanding of how complex their language is. So do they also have names for things like food, water, places, and ultimately researchers would love to be able to somehow play a sound that tells elephants that an area is not safe. So that's turning this into some practical, conservation kind of action item at the end of this. Is like, if you can speak elephant, can you tell them, get the heck out of here? There are poachers, or there's developments up ahead, go back, or no good food over here. Anything like that.
So part of this is we have known for a long time that any animal can basically be told its name and learn to identify that you're talking to it. You can name your cat, your dog, or your horse, and call them, and they'll pay some attention to you, whatever. The ability for any of those animals to use a name for another has not been seen in this way, right? So there's
an extra piece too, Justin, which is your cat and your dog know their name, but do they really? Or do they know that when they hear that sound, it requires their attention because they may get a treat?
And that's all I'm asking.
Totally different thing, right?
Right. And that's all I'm asking out of it, right? So we know that we can have that assignment of name that an animal can recognize as needing the attention, right? Which is sort of what this study is even showing, that they're paying attention to it. But the level where you have generated name and using it communally is a form of communication. Now, every sci-fi sort of movie you've ever seen where there's a first contact, what's the first thing that whoever is doing the first contact does? Is like, my name is, and they I am called human. My name is Justin. What are you and who are you? Like, that's like where we begin the communication in any of these first contact scenarios. If we have unlocked that they are assigning verbal communication to a thing, exactly right. It opens up the door to now realizing we may be able to actually speak to the elephants.
Individually.
If we have a common ground for naming of things, which is the problem with any sort of other animal communications. You can assign names to things and tell your dog to go get the leash, and it will go and maybe, if it's a well-trained enough dog, grab its own leash and bring it to you. Like, assigning names for things that we've assigned, recognizing things that we've assigned is one aspect that animals have been shown capable of doing. But assigning their own names to things and using that in communication is such a next level. Oh my goodness.
It implies, I mean, we already know cognitive processes, and abilities in elephants that are incredible. Memory, social, all sorts of stuff. But to go beyond that, to understand that if they are assigning each other names or even their own names and using that to identify themselves, that moves into the idea of having mind, having identity and agency. And it's not just ants, bees, whatever colony or social creatures. Humans are social creatures. But the theory of mind, where an individual can parse itself from the group, and the group recognizes that individual is different, but part of the group as well. I mean, that's a huge cognitive step.
And if I'm not mistaken, elephants do pretty good in that mirror test.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. They're with it.
They're very smart.
Yeah, humans.
Dang it. Well, I guess Blair, I think a long time ago may have decided figured out we're not the only sentient creature on the planet. But
oh, really?
Yeah.
The idea that we can learn the elephant language to some degree now would.
The question is, do you keep calling the zoo elephant Peanuts, or do you go every time you give a tour at the zoo and you're talking about your elephant, do you go, this is our female elephant and her husband?
I think you would have to, but you'd also probably have to add in a little bit of foot stomping in the exact right way, because they feel vibration through the feet. That might be part of the communication. There's a lot of subtle communication that elephants do through their feet that we've only just started to realize. So.
Oh yeah, the ultrasonic and subsonic sounds that they're able to perceive are also super important for their communication. And it's a question that I have. Of course, I hope that they controlled for it in the study, but like humans stomping around in the savannah, putting down speakers and playing songs and whatever, and the elephants didn't know that they were around and doing this. Like, I honestly bet that the elephants were like,
were they calling each other's names, or were they saying, what are they up to?
oh, when they do this one, you respond. And when they do this one, you respond. Yeah. Like, I don't know.
Too smart.
But I love this research. If people are interested in more, elephantvoices.org was involved in creating this elephant ethogram. And then there's also Save the Elephants, which is an organization working to save the elephants. So hopefully if you want more info, you can find them there. And Blair, I love your elephant impressions.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. May we continue with Justin? Would you like to duck out right now? Or can we
give me Justin's first story?
I've got a last story.
Yeah, he has one, and I have quick. Yeah, we'll jump.
My last story is researchers from Johns Hopkins University have utilized a new method of air testing, a mobile air testing lab, and they have discovered bad things down in the bayou. The study is published in Environmental Science and Technology, and it highlights significantly increased cancer risks for residents near ethylene oxide manufacturing and usage facilities along an area of Louisiana known as, I think it's called Cancer Alley.
Oh,
Yes,
interesting.
I've heard of this place. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so there's a reason they went looking here in the first place, but basically there's traditional air monitoring methods that the EPA uses for detecting ethylene oxide that have not been able to capture the full extent of the pollution found in the current study. Part of the reason they suspect is that the EPA sets up an air monitoring equipment in a set location. Now, depending on how long it's collecting and which way the wind is blowing, blah, 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 it may not find anything significant, or it might find something. So what these researchers did was they created a mobile lab, which allowed them to measure real-time ethylene oxide levels by repeatedly driving a route between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. The measurements revealed up to 40 parts per billion, which is a lot more than what is considered the red flag toxicity to human level of 11 parts per billion. So more than 3 times the red flag levels for exposure. The mobile lab consisted of 2 vans. These vans were equipped with different highly sensitive technologies to measure the ethylene oxide in real time as they drove these routes. During the winter of 2023, the team basically just drove around in a circle, looping along a heavily industrialized route between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, collecting air and testing it as they drove. And then the quote here from DiCarlo, who's one of the researchers involved: by driving the same route over and over and over again at different times of day and over the course of an entire month, we are able to build up statistics and get average concentrations throughout the region. The 2 testing methods agreed really well and provided us with confidence in the measurements that we took. They were able to follow airflow and detected concentration amounts of the gas as much as 10 kilometers downwind from the plants. Although facilities everywhere work with ethylene oxide, the facilities in this area are large and they are very concentrated within this southeastern Louisiana area where there's a history of significant environmental issues related to exposures of toxic chemicals, so much so that the area has become known as Cancer Alley. The EPA has recently proposed stricter rules for these emissions, and the study's findings might be able to help them in enforcing or detecting where their new regulations need to be applied.
But this image of where they drove around and they took their measurements and what they are showing in these various counties, and of course, this is not like super high resolution for this this shared thing. Long-term exposure to 11 parts per trillion is dangerous to health. There is one tiny corner of the infographic that has been shared that is beneath 10. The rest is over 10, 20, 30, and the majority is above 30, I would say.
So 60. The average,
there are places that are huge.
Yeah, the average was in that 40. There's places on this map that are 50 and 60, right? So the and there's housing, people living in this area who are not aware that this invisible gas that is highly toxic is in there. You know,
well, and one guess what the socioeconomic status is of the grand majority of people in that space.
Not Louisiana, so that's for sure.
What's Louisiana, so you can guess it about almost anywhere, but certainly this region.
No, it's specific. When I went there, they talked about Cancer Alley and specifically that this is where all of the least affluent homes end up, right? Is like you have in Baton Rouge proper, you have some really nice areas. In New Orleans proper, you have really nice areas. And in this belt in between is where you go if you don't have the means to live in Baton Rouge or in New Orleans.
But you end up there and you need to commute or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so you end up with a very clear socioeconomic gradient where Cancer Alley is. And also, there is often a ethnic piece to that as well,
For sure.
which is which is part of the reason why, like, environmental protections, climate change, and all these other things are also a DEI issue, is because a lot of the time communities of color are the ones who are getting a lot of these kind of negative impacts of environmental issues. So
Absolutely.
anyway,
And
tough.
then public health and healthcare and medical bills and all that kind of stuff. And
And then there's politicians who want to do away with the EPA. Like,
Yeah.
I love the whole like, concept too of like, well, we don't like something about water management and private land in Montana, and therefore the entire agency needs to go away, right? Meanwhile,
that sounds right.
There are companies who are causing human health issues, and with absolute freedom. And that is the world that we will continue to live in without a strong funded EPA. So thank goodness these researchers went and did this look and have given us this insight. And now maybe the EPA can take the baton and apply the regulations to these industries, or maybe do away with them if it need be.
We can only
if you can't clean up your mess, if you can't,
you'd think,
there is there's a whole philosophy of business being unregulated and allowed to do its thing because it's only affecting itself. When you are affecting others, you are exacting a cost from the public that you are not paying for in your financial structure of your business that must be accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
Can't kill people to make money. It's not right.
There's always accounting. No.
And Kiki, you got more stories?
I do. I have 2 quick stories that I'm going to run through very quickly. I was just opening some images for them so I can jump on through. In these 2 stories, first one up is, hey, you've been places. You know how to get places. You remember them. You have a mental map. And we're like, hey, where do we store all those mental maps in our brains? And we've got the hippocampus that helps us store all that stuff. Well, some researchers just publishing in Nature this week talked about mental navigation in the primate entorhinal cortex. Yes, they did research on primates, and these monkeys in these studies, they trained not to go places but to use a joystick. And so the monkeys learned a digital space. And so they used a joystick to get around. And then the researchers were like, well, what if you just think about these places that you used to go with your joystick? And so they pretty much showed that the monkeys had this amazing response to this situation in which they could time everything down to this millisecond of when they would normally have moved the joystick around and been in certain contextual situations in the digital space. The monkeys were then, their neurons in an area of the brain, the entorhinal cortex, which is right near the hippocampus. So it's all in there in the same kind of space. The neurons were activated in the same way at the same time in the entorhinal cortex when they were thinking about using the joystick as when they actually were using the joystick.
So they basically showed them the screen but took the joystick away. Is that what they did?
Yeah. But then they took the screen away. And the monkeys were visualizing it. And they showed that the monkeys were visualizing it very well on their own. They're like, hey, I started here. Oh, okay, I'm going to go there next. Oh, yeah. And all of those vector-based cues, so like three-dimensional space neurons, basically orientation neurons, were in play at the time. So like when you're playing a video game, Counter-Strike or World of Warcraft or whatever, and you're your integral cortex, if you're imagining it outside of the gameplay, it's actually happening in there. Like there's a map.
So it's like you're there, is what you're
Mhm.
saying.
Yeah, there's
It
So-
feels like you're in the game.
So
Yeah.
That's cool.
it's in your
I am
brain, man.
what is it? What's the kind of thing where you dream, but you're like aware of the thing in the dream? What's that
Lucid
called again?
dreaming.
Yes.
Lucid
yeah.
dream. So I'm a very lucid dreamer. Like when I'm dreaming, I'm very aware that I'm dreaming and that I'm in a dream. And my brain uses maps of locations for dreams. Like my grandparents' house is a common theme. Regardless of what's going on, I could be in a spaceship and the spaceship is flying and I realize like, oh, there's a room to the spaceship over here and one over here and there's a bathroom. Oh, this is actually my grandparents' house that has been turned into a spaceship for the use of this dream. Like it happens constantly. My dreams use that data, access that data for mapping to create the environment for the dream. Almost to the point where I spend a lot of times in my dreams trying to pinpoint what structure this is based on, and you usually can find it pretty quickly. But it's interesting too because in there's we were talking about mapping from video games. I've done that before too. Like, wow, what is this place? Oh, this is a level in Fallout 3 or whatever. Like, I know what this building. This is from a video game I played because that mental mapping also is working in a virtual realm to create that map. So
and I think that's the cool thing is that our brains don't know real space from virtual space, and so space is space, and maps are being created, and we got to keep going. And
the
it's
brain
so
is a
cool.
virtual space.
It is a virtual space. It is responsive to space and our existence within it. It is our embodied brain, right? And it's what's I think the big thing about this is that this is a big step forward in determining the neurons that are involved in the mapping of space in our brains and how they become active. And basically when you're mental mapping, when you're building memory castles, all that stuff, this part of the brain is involved. Last study, again, related to primates, baby baboons, left or right-handed, Blair?
Left.
Actually, researchers have discovered that baboons tend to be very right-handed, very similar.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of primates are left.
Yep. These are they are mostly right-handed. These researchers at the CNRS, they were able to, these French researchers were studying the baby baboons and the neuroanatomy of their brains. And they could predict, based on how the brains were asymmetrying, what they called, that just like human babies, these newborn baboons, 70% of them at least, had early asymmetry in the planum temporal. It's an area related to language in humans. It's larger in the left brain hemisphere.
Which is the
right hand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, this is how it worked in these baboons. And in Nature Communications, they have just published this study, and they've shown that they are able to correlate the difference in brain structure and symmetry after birth. These are live baboons. They just did neuroimaging. And then they could predict, based on modeling, which hand these baboons were going to use. And some of the baboons did not have as much asymmetry as the others. And they were the ones who were like, no, I might be ambidextrous. And they would use both hands or whatever. So there was differentiation similar to humans in these baboons.
I'm a little bit afraid that my youngest boy is a freak. He seems to favor the left for a lot of things. He's a bit ambidextrous still, but he's really favors that left.
So I think my little one is left-handed.
Awesome. It's wonderful. It's a gift.
Yeah.
It's a total
wild.
A couple of freaky
Their brains
children.
work different.
Well,
Yeah.
I didn't realize I wasn't actually showing this picture the whole time because I
Oh.
turned off automatic screen sharing earlier tonight. But yeah, they were able to really see the difference between the newborns and the juveniles and the biases and how similar they were to human infants, which was, fairly similar actually. Different proportions overall, but similar trend. And this is one of the first times that we have been able to go, oh my gosh, wait a minute. We thought humans were super special with our handedness, and that was language ability. And oh my gosh, and that's what it's. But maybe it came from our ancestors because now we're seeing that this is a developmental thing in the baboons as well. So
We're not special. Everyone chill.
you're special.
Elephants have names. Baboons have handedness. Get over yourself.
It's so great. I love these little handed little baboons with their hands and what they're going to do. But right now, if I had a baby baboon, well, no, actually, I don't want a baby baboon. That probably would not be nice. No, nope. You want to leave them with their mothers and let that happen all on its own. But I think that, handedness is great for doing things like going, bye. We have finished all of our shows for the night, haven't we? Ambidextrously,
You've done it.
communicatively, right-handed, left-handed, all of it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of This Week in Science. We are out of here. We got to head on out, and I really want to thank you for listening tonight. I just love that you're here with us in the chat rooms, everyone watching live, and also if you're not watching live, thank you for watching later. Fada, thank you for your help on show notes and social media. Rachel, thank you for editing the show. Identity4, thank you for recording the show, and Gord, Arnlor, all others who help to upkeep the kindness of our chat rooms. Thank you for what you do. If you are excited about talking in our Discord, you can also look at us on Patreon, and that happens when you are a Patreon sponsor. So become a patron, and I will say your name somewhat like this, variably depending on the time of the month. Alan Viola, Aaron Anathema, Arthur Kepler, Craig Potts, Mary Gertz, Teresa Smith, Richard Badge, Bob Coles, Kent Northout, George Course, Pierre Velazarb, John Ratnaswamy, Chris Wozniak, Viegard Chefstad, Donegan Styles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, Ali Coffin, Reagan Shubru, Sarah Forfar, Don Mundus, PIG, Stephen Albaran, Daryl Myshak, Andrew Swanson, Fredis, 104, Sky Luke, Paul, Ronovich, Kevin Ridden, Noodles Jack, Brian Carrington, David E. Youngblood, Sean Clarence Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Remy Day, G. Burton Lattimore, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom, Greg Briggs, Get Out of the Dominican Republic, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, Lon Makes, EO, Aaron Mishkan, Aaron, Luthen, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul D, Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Pecoraro, Tony Steele. Thank you all. Darn it. I see I'm at the end of the list. I read them all just like that. I need to change that setting again. And if you would like to support us on Patreon, just like these wonderful people, head over to twist.org, click on the Patreon link, and choose your level of support. $10 or more a month gets you to this level, but any level will probably get you into the Discord. We'll be back again next week, right?
At 8 p.m. Pacific time, Wednesday, Thursday, 5 a.m. Central European time, broadcasting live from Twitch, the YouTube, the Facebooks, the wherever you got, we're probably there.
Oh, Blair, you do this part.
You got it. Want to listen to us as a podcast? Just search for This Week in Science where podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe as well.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to the stories will be available on our website, www.twis.org.
It's how many W's is that? 3?
I think
we
it
love
was
your
3.
feedback.
Sometimes it might be 4.
If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, or a suggestion for us for an interview, please let us know on one of our social media accounts or send us an email. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line. Or you know what? I'm going to encapsulate it in a nice gel capsule, and I'm going to sell it as a supplement on the street corner.
Oh, God. No, you don't know where that's going to go.
We look forward to having these science discussions with you again next week. And if you've learned anything from the show, do remember,
it's all in your head. Wait, which one's the outro? That one.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculation.
Oh, don't get me wrong, but it's the after show, but not really, because it was late. Blair needs to go to bed. There's a baby in the house. Brian probably has to go to work. Justin's up in the morning. He's probably been up all night, I think, actually, because I think I saw him in the spreadsheet at times when he really should have been sleeping. And I haven't slept enough in many days. Thank goodness for summer. I think. I'm good.
I have the worst jet lag coming from the US to back to the Europe time, Central European time zone. It just doesn't go away. It just like my body just keeps fighting it. Like, no, that can't be right.
Because your body's like, this is not where I was born, and it does not have to be here. And it's like fighting no gravity. Your body's like, ah.
So, despite having been awake since midnight, I actually got a ton of sleep yesterday. So it's like, it's not that I'm unrested.
You're not helping yourself by sleeping during the day. You got to power through and sleep at night.
Yeah.
That's the only way to fix jet lag. You have to power through.
Yeah, you have to. Remember last week I was like, don't go to sleep. And you're like, maybe a nap. And I was like, no, don't go to sleep. Stay up and go to bed. You're like, no, maybe a nap. And I was like, don't do that. And then you're like, oh no, I'm going to go take a nap. And I was like, okay, this explains why you're complaining about it right now.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah,
Kiki, the next two shows are on Wednesdays, right?
What?
Wheelhouse.
Because the date in the run sheet is Tuesday for the next 2 weeks.
I got it all wrong. I thought today was the 11th before I actually started putting the show together today. And I was like, and then I changed it to the 12th.
Okay, good. Okay,
I think I wanted
Which is great because it's the 13th here. So I don't even pay attention to anything. You guys are.
Okay. I just wanted to check.
Glad you caught it because I'm like, Tuesday? Well, it must be Thursday here now. It's planet's bigger than I thought. Well, that's fine.
No, I mean, if there were a change like that, I would have discussed it with everybody. And
yeah. Yes, I have a desk job, so I have to know what day of the week it is. Stupid desk job.
I have to. I work on a couch at home. I have to know what time it is.
But I have various meetings and deadlines every day.
Meetings.
It's very annoying.
I do too. I have meetings. I have to know what day it is. I have to send emails and do the things and at particular times and look like I am a functioning member of society.
Hey, that's great. I really
appearance is everything. I just want you to know that. Oh God.
For real. I was on a call yesterday and the facilitator was like, "Oh man, you have a 10-month-old? You look really rested." And I was like, "It's the Zoom filter, my man."
Just put it on just enough.
Touch up my appearance. The one on StreamYard is very aggressive. The one on Zoom is it's so nice. It's very subtle. Turn that all the way up as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. Let's go for it. very strong. Did it change anything? Am I very strong now? Did it?
Yeah, my nose is gone. Check it out.
Oh my goodness. It's kind of slightly
I
random.
have no nose now.
Hang on, let me try.
That's really funny. We're so wrinkleless forever.
Oh, I look.
It just
I'm
looks
a
like everyone took their
smooth
glasses
kid.
off, kind of.
I know. Yeah. You're like, oh, what happened to my wrinkles? My age, it is gone. I am no longer an astronaut
All right.
flying on the spaceship Earth. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, much strong.
I got to Scrooge McDuck into bed
Yeah,
as
we should
quietly as
all
possible.
we should all head out. I am just thankful that we all were able to come together for an episode together because it's always the most fun when we're all able to talk to each other. So next week, I hope we are all able to combine forces and form Science Voltron once again.
I will have the really early heart out on that one. I won't be able to make it through the 90-minute show even.
Perfect. It'll be just even a tighter 90 next week.
Like a tight 60
No.
is what I'll be able to do.
You know, I don't even, you used to be able to do that. You can't do that anymore. You don't even know what that is.
I was thinking about that today, how when we were on TWIS, you'd have to move on real quick, and then I'd like write a note like, oh, I want to talk about that more in the after show. And then we talk about things in the after show instead.
Now it's just like, I want to talk about it now. I'm going to just keep talking about it. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Blair, glad you're here. Justin, glad you're here. I mean, Blair's in the 80s with her shirt. Justin's like what, 50s maybe?
No, it's not
70s.
I don't think this has got to be.
I guess the collar's really long, so maybe that's 70s.
70s.
This is
Late
this is
60s or early 70s, I would say. Yeah.
I don't know. I think my shirt that you can't see, it's my 90s.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Pew, pew, pew.
It's the TWIS Eras tour. Is that a thing? I've heard those words around.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Kind of like how we are. Everyone, have a wonderful week. Sleep well, or wake up well, wherever you are.
Wake up several times tonight. Well,
yeah. Stay engaged. Don't take anything for granted. You know, look at everything with your science hat on and go, what would Kiki and Justin and Blair say about this? You know,
if all else fails, be lucky.
No, the first you got to stay healthy and be safe and be curious, and then be lucky. See you next week, everyone. Night.